Welcome to the Therapists Uncut Podcast, where off-the-clock therapists who happen to be friends share their uncensored thoughts about real life. Join us weekly in spreading positivity and making mental health relatable through casual conversation, inspirational stories, and real talk with friends who happen to be therapists. Please welcome your co-hosts, Nikki Young and Alyssa Najera.
Welcome back to Therapists Uncut. Guys, my name is Alyssa Najera, and I am here with Nikki Young, licensed marriage and family therapist. And we are excited to talk to you guys today about how to communicate with your partner. Or maybe, actually, this is probably applicable in all avenues of life, huh?
Totally, yes. All these skills are completely generalizable to any interaction. However, yes, we're going to talk about it within the context of your relationship.
You get daily opportunities within your relationship. And today we are talking about fair fighting and what agreements we should probably consider when we disagree with our partner.
Yeah. And okay, so I do a lot of couples work, and there's this idea that there's going to be solvable problems and then unsolvable problems in your relationship. And solvable problems are the things that come up that maybe aren't a theme, isn't something that you deal with all the time, kind of a one-off type of conflict, something that you can resolve. Then there's also going to be what we would refer to as unsolvable problems. These are the issues that 15 years from now, you guys are still going to be fighting about. You're still not going to be on the same page, still going to be an issue. But what makes the difference, research shows, in across all of these situations is how we talk about it, how we, quote, fight about it. And I know fair fighting is a big thing in couples therapy. I don't really like the word because fighting has such a negative connotation with it, right? So I like fair conflict, fair disagreement, fair, I don't know, not fighting, but I guess most of the world might call it fighting. So
I have no thought on that. The reason being, if you guys follow us, you know that Nikki does couples therapy. I do not. So I feel like in this episode, I'm actually going to be learning a lot from Nikki, probably using my own personal examples, having her opinion on how to help improve my marriage. I mean, that sounds like a great idea.
All right. So we got you and Anthony served up today to work with.
Ready. I mean, I should probably get his permission first, but it's cool. We'll just roll with it.
No, but really, how many of you guys out there feel like you just get stuck, right? The disagreement itself might not be anything particularly significant, or it is, but you feel like you get stuck more in the process than with the actual issue at hand.
But here's the thing. It is a big deal in that 10 seconds. Like, I can't get my mind past it beyond the 10 seconds of whether or not it's going to matter, 3 days from now. But right now, it's a big fucking deal, and we're going to deal with it. My way, of course. Not your way, my way.
No. Your way it's not a thing. It's wrong. Yeah. And this is human nature, right? Most people feel inclined to defend themselves. Now, there's going to be a whole spectrum of how people just naturally are inclined to handle things, but it's a human kind of inclination to defend our position.
Where does that come from?
I don't know.
Now that you're the expert on this episode, talk to me about why we're always defensive. Because my defense wall comes up pretty often. I do my best to control it in my professional capacity because there's obviously severe consequences that could happen. I guess the same also applies in my marriage because severe consequences can also happen. But I am more inclined to have it come up quicker in my marriage. And maybe it's because he's my safe place that I don't know.
I think that's a piece of it, right? Because if we're having an interaction in a professional setting or with an acquaintance, even in a social setting with somebody that's not one of our people, right? We're more likely to pay attention to how we're responding. We're more likely to try to stay within these respectful boundaries. And I think part of it is comfort. I think part of it is we let our guard down. We let our defenses down with this person, which on one hand can be obviously a wonderful thing in many instances. But at the same time, this person then gets us at our worst at times. And there's a piece of that yes, can you be real with your person? But then there's a piece of it that, I always try to throw it out there. Isn't there a version of this where our person deserves our best,
like, yes, we don't have to be perfect. I'm not trying to say that, but within the context of how we communicate, is it fair that this person that means the most to us, or one of the people that means the most to us, is getting our poorest communication skills?
I really feel like we need to add that to the agreement in our vows of, I will do my very best to give you my best, and I will learn to disagree in a healthy way. Like, these are solid foundational things that are great in any relationship.
Totally. And again, there can be a lot of pressure. Even I felt that as you're talking, like, I will do my best to give you my best.
And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect all the time. It just means that we should give it attention. We should give it energy rather than just kind of accepting that, sorry, you're just going to get me at my worst when I'm,
You know what? I would say, though, and we're going to get to the fair fighting agreements eventually, or whatever Nikki's going to call it for this episode. But I recognize that when my stress levels go up, as do my defense walls, and my communication skills dip. And then it takes a lot of disagreements before my husband is kind of like, dude, what's up? I mean, he doesn't call me dude. I say dude. But he's like, babe, what's up? What's going on? And he's very calm about it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm fine. Right? Mm-hmm. So I guess that's where the self-awareness comes into play.
Okay. All right, let's talk about it. And instead of fair fighting, I'm going to call it kosher conflict.
Wow. That's creative.
I just came up with that right now.
Nikki's going to check.
I'm all about the alliteration. All right. So let's talk about it. So you started to go there already. You get so worked up that cognitive function and communication just plummets, right? So that's a piece of it. One of the techniques, one of the tactics that we are going to want to employ is to increase in awareness. Haha, surprise. We're all about increasing awareness over here at Therapists Uncut. Increasing awareness of your bodily responses. So if you're in any form of a disagreement or a fight with your significant other, spouse, whatever it may be, we're going to get a fight or flight response to some degree. Our blood pressure is going to increase. We might get worked up. We might notice that our body starts, for Italian or Greek, like my wife, the hands are going to start to get going. And that might be an indication that you're getting worked up. And
can I tell you that apparently we've been married for 10 years and this is how I get worked up. The other day he told me, okay, I'm going to end this conversation because your nose is flaring and you keep blinking. And he said, you keep blinking at me. I was like, what? I'm doing what? He's like, your eyes keep blinking. And apparently I was like, no, they're not. It was just,
blink harder.
It's just so much harder. So if you guys can see me on the video, I'm very clearly blinking when I get a little flustered. But these are the things that you may not be aware of until your partner reflects it back to you. So maybe you're someone whose arms go crazy. Who knows?
And let's take that feedback because did you have any idea that you're a blinker? No, because we're not aware of our own, most of the time, we're not aware of the little nuances and our tells, but our partner is very aware and sensitized to those. So it can be good to have these conversations when you're not in the middle of the kosher conflict, to take that feedback and to really explore what are your signs, because paying attention to those is key. So in a fair fighting, if you're getting worked up to the point
kosher conflict,
if you are getting worked up to the point where you are not communicating effectively, take a time out. Take a pause.
But who is in charge of taking the time out?
We would want to get to the place where the person who's worked up can take ownership of that and say, I need a timeout. However, if your partner's willing to help you out with that and recognize that maybe a timeout would be beneficial to you both, then they can assist with that. But there's a way to do that that's helpful. And there's a way to do that that's just condescending, right? Like, well, I am not going to talk with you right now because clearly you can't handle this and you're this and you're this. So you need a timeout. Not going to be helpful. Right. But if you can phrase it in a way like, hey, I'm noticing that maybe it might be supportive if we take just a break. Like, I still want to talk with you about this. Let's just each do something to calm down and we'll come back. And that is the key.
And do you guys notice how minimally Nikki said the word you? I want you guys to recognize how when you say the word you over and over and over, the other person's defense wall shoots up immediately, because if we use this word, how we often typically use it, it is going to come out like you were accusing the person of something or like the other person is immediately doing something wrong.
The blame game.
It's absolutely blaming, and pay attention to it. Like when people speak to you, think about how often they're using that word you and how you're responding to it. Because if your partner or your peer is instead using I statements, and Nikki used a lot of I and we, your defense wall is likely going to be pretty low, which means you're going to be able to engage in this communication versus react.
And this is huge. And I think, when we initially start talking about this stuff, a lot of times I get feedback from a couple that's initially like the eye roll, like this is stupid, floofy counseling stuff. Like that's not going to make a difference. And then I always get buy-in, right? Okay, fine. You can feel that way, but try it with me. And it does. It goes such a long ways in just neutralizing things. Because when you are coming at the issue, so listen, if you and I are in a conflict right now, and I'm saying, well, you do this and you do that, and you, it's the blame game, and it's putting all the focus on you. And like you said, your defenses are going to skyrocket, and then our ability to communicate is just going to tank. But if I can come in and tell you how I'm feeling about something, it just takes the edge off of that, right? Like, hey, I'm feeling unheard. Here's what I need. And it could be very, usually in the beginnings of starting this process and making baby steps towards changing that piece of communication. Oftentimes it's, well, I feel hurt because you, and it's so easy to slide back into that.
Resentful of you when you do.
Exactly.
Try again.
Yep, exactly. Nice try. Let's go back to the drawing board. Keeping it about how you're feeling and then following up with a need. Right? If let's say your partner's interrupting you, I feel unheard, and I would really appreciate if I would be able to, if I could share what I'm trying to share with you. It will make me feel heard in this conversation, as opposed to all you do is interrupt. And it's just going to it's going to open up that road for communication.
And guys, this isn't natural. Like this is not the way our brain naturally thinks to communicate. It takes effort, and you'll see Nikki and I try to phrase examples of how to use this communication, and we might even stutter in session or on camera because it's hard, and we teach this stuff and we try to practice this stuff, but it's still difficult. But what you practice grows stronger. So make an effort to recognize how you can change your language so that way you can communicate effectively with your partner.
And there really are scripts around this, right? I mean, it's not like, hey, you say this and I say this, but there's scripts on how to respond. If this happens, here's an effective way to combat that. I want to wrap back around really quick before we move on to the timeout. A big piece of the timeouts is coming back to the table. A lot of times in a relationship, you might have a pursuer and a distancer. A distancer is somebody, when conflict arises, I'm out. I don't want this. I can't handle this. I am running, putting up my walls. I am backing away. And then the pursuer often feels abandoned in that moment. They want to have resolution. They're going to chase you, and it just creates a whole dynamic, right? A key piece of taking a timeout, and even if that's not, if you're both distancers, if you're both pursuers, whatever it is, you have to circle back around. So if you are the person taking the timeout, if you are the person that needs it, would benefit from it, you have to circle back around so that we can complete this process. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to have any resolution. We're not going to learn. We're not going to grow our intimacy and reconnect. So
when is a good time to circle back around?
Depends. Some people create a time frame. Everybody's unique. I might need 5 minutes to chill out. I just need 5 minutes to go take a breather, to reset and come back. I might need 5 hours, right? I mean, we want to set a time frame and come back. And if my time frame is 10 minutes, and at the end of the 10 minutes, I'm still not there, then I'm going to come back and say, hey, I still want to talk about this. I'm not quite at a place where, and again, keeping it about me, I'm still not at a place where I can probably effectively tell you how I'm feeling yet. So I'm going to take another 10 minutes, but I am coming back. And it's a safety and a reassurance thing as well. All right. So I had to wrap back around to that. Sorry. So we got timeouts. We've got I statements instead of you statements. What else we got?
As always, we have practicing self-awareness. We have to constantly recognize when that threat response, essentially the kind of innate threat response we have in our body, is activated. Because when it's activated, we're just going to be reactive and we're going to operate like completely out of emotional. So I like to tell people, if you think about your wise mind, your emotional mind, and is it logical? Is that what I'm missing in this whole DBT visual? Got it. Okay. When we operate out of the emotional, it's literally like your 5-year-old self that is stomping on the ground saying, I want this and I want it now. And there's like no logic with it. Don't operate from pure emotions. Why? Because it probably gets you into trouble. And then you got to backtrack to kind of fix all the things that kind of went wrong in this conversation. So self-awareness, as always, is a tool that you want to use.
And I always like to tell my couples, because you had said the backtrack piece and the if we let it get away from us, something I tell my couples is it's never too late in this interaction. Like every second is an opportunity to insert yourself into the process, stop, regroup, and pivot, right? So you might have just engaged in a you statement. You might have just called them a name. You might have yelled. You might have done something. That doesn't mean all is lost. We're now just embedded in this pattern. You can always call a stop. You can always pause and pivot and try again, right? And so name calling, that's another one. No name calling, guys. No yelling. Because
that's fair. No name calling.
Yeah. Don't call him an asshole. Don't do it. All right. If you notice your tone escalating, not cool. Right. Like these are things that are going to prevent you guys from actually focusing on the issue at hand, because they're all distractions and they're all forms of criticism and contempt that we're coming at you with disrespect. Really. We want to be respectful in this.
And even recognizing if your defense mechanism is sarcasm or humor when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate in these conversations, because it can also come off pretty like dismissive.
Callous, yeah. And talk with your person about this. Like part of this is to talk with your person about what fair fighting looks like to them, what's important to them. Because I know couples, they use humor masterfully to navigate this stuff, and it diffuses situations. But both people are on board. Both people appreciate the humor. Both people feel the outlet of the humor, and both benefit from it. If one person does and the other person is severely offended, then that's not going to go well. So have these open conversations with each other about what is important to you, right? One person might think that I'm not yelling. I am just talking passion. Like I'm just whatever the word would be. And the other person is like, holy crap, you're out of control. Right. Or vice versa. One person might apologize. I'm sorry. I just, use that tone. And the other person's clueless. Like, what? That's fine. Right. So have these open conversations with each other about what you each need. It includes physical proximity, right? Like, do I need to be close to you during this because it makes me feel reassured and comforted? Do I need some space from you? Do we need to sit across a table just so I kind of have my own bubble during this of safety and emotional safety, right? If physical safety is at all a concern during this, we're looking at something different. So we would want you to come talk with somebody specifically about that. You can't have a fair fight or disagreement when your physical safety is a question. It's not going to happen. And that's not up to you to fix. That's on them. So we always want you to seek support.
This is definitely an individualized process, because when Nikki was talking about humor and whether or not you guys are on the same page or not, I am not somebody who wants you to joke when we're trying to have a serious conversation. I feel like I want to punch you in the face to do that. I'm not going to punch you because I have self-control, but that is the last thing I want. But that's me. Right? Mm-hmm. That's just my individualized experience of all of this.
Totally individualized. Heck yeah. Like if my wife used humor, I would love it, right? Because it just means we're diffusing the situation and we're headed in a positive direction. Whereas
I would think you're not taking me seriously and you're not taking this conversation seriously.
Exactly.
So completely individualized. You guys have to be aware of what works for you and what doesn't work for you, but then you have to communicate that to your partner. And this isn't a one-time talk. It's an ongoing communication, an ongoing process. The other tip I have that I'm still struggling with is avoiding interrupting. I'm pretty sure I have an ADD brain, so I get really excited and I don't want to lose my thought, and so I will interrupt. And that is not received well.
And part of that can be the I don't want to lose this, but how much I'm going to challenge you right here. How much of that is related back to I don't want to lose the point I'm trying to make that will drive home that I am right in all of this.
Am I supposed to answer them?
No, you don't have to answer. Think about it, right? Because so much of our time when we are not fighting fair, when we are not fighting effectively or having kosher conflict, we spend that time that our partner is speaking, we spend it in our head formulating our responses, formulating our comebacks, how we can, it's a debate in that moment, right? I can get him there. I can get him there. And we completely lose all effectiveness.
But if you do struggle with ADD or ADHD, which is now in the new DSM is now fully ADHD with subtypes, but you are going to have a difficult time concentrating and focusing on this conversation because you're going to want to divert or interrupt or do other things. So I would say be very conscious of that too if you already have that struggle.
That in and of itself, whether or not you struggle with ADHD, is a key component. When you are having conflict, keep it about one thing. Right? Because so often conflicts just completely devolve into 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 other things that are pissing me off or whatever it is. And then we completely lose all effectiveness. Then it becomes more of an attack, or then it becomes being more of a blame game, right? Keep it about the issue at hand, which is why another reason you had suggested having constant conversation with your partner, continual about what works for you guys when you're having conversations. I encourage couples to have that when they're not fighting, right? Have these constructive conversations when you're not fighting. Otherwise, it can just devolve into, okay, my original issue was that you didn't go grocery shopping after work, but now we're fighting about how we're fighting, and I'm telling you that you're not doing it right and this and that and the other. So having these conversations outside of that. And when the issue is that you didn't go grocery shopping after work and now I have to do it, keep it about that. This is not about the attacks on yours. Just what were you doing? Are you just so lazy? Are you just so forgetful? This, that, and the other. Keep it about, I feel undervalued. Because this didn't happen, I now have to do this when this is what my schedule looks like tomorrow. And I'm feeling incredibly overwhelmed about that. And I would really appreciate, it would have meant a lot to me for this to have happened. This is how it would have supported me.
I feel like we should just slap these agreements somewhere on the fridge. And every time it's a disagreement, we just walk to where the signage is and make sure we're following everything as we walk through. Because this is a lot to remember, especially when you're heated.
That is a thing. That is a thing. It is hugely helpful, right? To post some of the tips, and maybe you don't have to post all of them, but the ones that apply most to you, right? So if the feedback you get is, hey, in a positive conversation, when you're having this separate from a fight, when the feedback you get is, hey, you do this a lot, and hey, you do that a lot, keep those notes where they're easily readable, accessible, identify. If you fight a lot in the kitchen, post it on the fridge. If you tend to have these conflicts in the privacy of your bathroom or whatnot, put them on the mirror. Keep them prevalent. Keep them accessible.
And on another note, when you are disagreeing with your partner and you have kids in the room or kids in the household, you're modeling very effective ways of disagreeing and conflict resolution. So remember that too. Everything that you're doing is being absorbed by your kids. Little tidbit.
And a way I like to phrase it for couples is, if your child were in this conflict right now, if your child were having this discussion with their partner, I don't care if your kid's 5, fast forward 20 years. If your daughter or son is standing there having this conversation, would you want their partner to be treating them the way that you are treating your spouse? And a lot of times it's, I hadn't thought about that. But what you are modeling is what they are not only going to do to others, but how they are going to accept being treated in return.
Mm-hmm. And caveat to this episode, relationships are hard, guys. They are so hard. They take a lot of work, and sometimes we need some professional help. In that case, do not feel any shame in reaching out for a couples therapist to help you get on track and learn these new skills that maybe you've known and forgotten, or maybe you never knew to begin with. So please reach out.
Absolutely. You can have the best, most solid relationship and still have areas to improve on, right? My favorite work is with couples that are fucking love each other, but they've got just, they need to do some tweaking in this area. You can have the most fun, most connected, just most fantastic relationship and have things to work on, right? And that only makes it more fantastic. You only increase the intimate connection when you guys can learn how to successfully handle conflict. I mean, I came across something, I think it was on social media last night, actually. And it was just a meme, but it totally just hit home with me in that conflict, when you get to a certain place, conflict isn't necessarily scary, or disagreement, rather. It's not necessarily this icky, scary thing anymore. It's an opportunity for intimate connection. Because if you can get yourself to a point where you're genuinely wanting to understand your partner, you're curious about where they're coming from, because this is clearly important to them and you're wanting to learn about that, and vice versa. I mean, you can just completely grow your intimate connection based off that. So it's pretty cool, actually. I love this
stuff. Level of intimacy scares you or freaks you out, there might be some other underlying issues that might be helpful to address in your own individual therapy. Just something to consider. I do want to speak to our car gurus and our mechanics out there too. If you guys could imagine your car, you do not wait until your car breaks down to take it to the shop, right? You're doing regular maintenance, you're doing oil changes, you're getting the tires rotated. Why? Because you don't want it to break down. It's the same with your relationship. This is all maintenance stuff to make sure you guys are in a good place. So your marriage or your relationship, I want to say doesn't end, but sometimes relationships do end. That's just, I think people make the misconception that couples counseling means that we're going to stay together forever. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not the couples therapist, but sometimes the decision does come to end a relationship if it's not healthy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's an individualized decision for you as the couple to make, right? That's not a decision that your therapist is going to make for you or even suggest. We're just here to support you in your process. Right. So if increasing communication is a part of your separation process that you can effectively and respectfully separate, then heck yeah, we could do that too.
I've heard people say that I want to go to therapy because I need someone to tell me what to do. Guys, we don't tell people what to do, just so you're aware.
And clients hate it.
We do not tell you what to do.
They hate it. Yeah. And, couples therapy too, you see that dynamic. Not only do they want the therapist to tell them what to do, but they also want the therapist to tell their partner that they're stop doing this or you're wrong, or that's a fun dynamic.
We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you guys are searching for any couples therapist, Nikki is spot on, hands down, our resident couples therapist. So if you're located in California, you can find her website on the show notes at therapistuncut.com. So come check us out.
Cool deal. Thanks for joining us, guys. And I know we kind of breezed through this. This could be months of therapy packed into, pieces of it packed into one episode. But if it interests you, do a little research, give one of us a call. It really can be fun work.
Thank you for joining us on the Therapists Uncut podcast and helping us make mental health relatable and a part of your everyday conversation. If you have not yet, please subscribe, follow, like, and share our episodes with somebody who you think can benefit. See you guys on the next episode.
Thank you for joining Therapists Uncut, a production of AMP Smart Business. To learn more about Therapists Uncut and stay up on upcoming episodes, please subscribe and follow us on social media. As a reminder, although the Therapists Uncut co-hosts are licensed therapists, they are not your therapists. This podcast is not intended to substitute professional mental health counseling. If you need professional therapy, please contact your local provider or primary care provider. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Therapists Uncut.